The limits of a home sitting in the largeness of a housing scheme set in a city is a series of boundaries that generations of governance and design have established. Boundaries which have led to the development of intangible layers of individual inhabitants' insecurity, the health, the relationships, and finally aspirations. These boundaries on the larger consciousness of the city drive the creation of a aspirational jumble created by master plans. HIG, MIG, LIG, SRA, the branding of the population, the labeling that gives them the right to become urban ghettos of intolerance. A leper colony feels it is right to create borders of its own. Kachrapada or garbage collectors settlements feels a need for safety, a safety net of its own. These safety nets welcome the migrating populace from the rural origins in search of better lives and opportunities for employment because they are also their own. As we aim to turn these informalities into formal nomenclature, the success parameters might be in the breaking the mass into the detail of individuality that will be housed in it, in the gender roles, usage, and the flexibility of age groups that will have it. How do we bridge the boundaries of time, traditions, and adaptations? These boundaries may have also limited or created a stalemate in the way the architects perceive the subject of housing. What I like and see the opportunity in the in-half competition is that they don't use the word sustainability but the term livability. Annually, many competitions on housing have been announced. Is it because that we have not been able to crack the code? Or is it that the housing as a sector for design and planning is the most dynamic and constantly evolving, not in technology or techniques, but the demand of the demography itself? Maybe in a handling of the subject, the architect and the planner need to become the audience to make the exercise interdisciplinary and intercultural and address the fact that we may not have changed the templates of design thinking, the integration of the needs of the people, design technology, services, and livelihoods. We're not taking into context that the populace migrating to cities may well come with their strengths, which could answer to the demand of the city, where farmers are traditional knowledge keepers who understand landscapes, climates, natural cycles, water and biodiversity, all things missing from the cosmetic urban development. As the competition calls for research not just as a larger blue sky planning level, but as a real-time objective which deals with intricacies of people, projects, and its potentials, it is a platform to explore the relationship between the governing city, the developer, the community, and the single family. It allows us to explore if we should be looking at polarity as a differentiator or as a meeting ground. Not individuality versus community, but engaging the single tenement as a family home relying on the community resources with its own offerings. Idealism as realism, traditions as technology tools, mass housing as a social footprint to reduce, thus creating an ecosystem which allows for all the set approaches of incremental usage, participatory, inclusive, and co-housing, all derivatives of best practices from around the world, but with the very need to be localized. Maybe the solution for the jigsaw called social housing is in the bridging of these boundaries by shifting from an objective viewpoint to architecture to a subjective based viewpoint, where the strong social political layer of settlement, the settlement itself synchronizes with the walls of physicality that designers lay. When we see the informalities, it increasingly feels like a stubborn child or an adolescent not given what it wants, in the way it messes up the space with waste and garbage, in the hygiene management, in the sharing of resources, in locking the doors to the room to the parental diktat, in this case, the city government. Let's look back at ourselves as we lay the plot, not as architects, but as habitants to try understand the other. At this point, I would like to recommend the film Via Humanity by Alexandre Derains, which deals with issues surrounding the other, where ideas of living that suits us may not just suit the other, especially if our target user may not share our language, our lifestyles, or our communication, and more importantly, not be able to represent themselves, which might well be the case in the case of this competition and the people who are being rehabilitated. Do we treat them as charity or clients who deserve the complexity and commonality of the design experiences from us? In that will lie the success of this competition.